begin with the disruption in the Ontario legislature. Members of the public lined up early to watch as the controversial notwithstanding clause was set to be used for the first time ever in the province. But as they made noise from the public gallery, the Speaker of the House intervened and ordered the area to be cleared. Here's how it played out inside Queen's Park.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to clear the galleries. We have to clear the galleries. Clear the galleries.
And this was the scene outside the legislature, as those who were removed from the public gallery were applauded by other protesters on the lawn. We'll try and show you those images. As you can see, many people outside of the Ontario legislature asking to be let in. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is there.
The disruption started just a few minutes into question period, Andrew, which got underway about 10:30, and things started off as normal with official opposition leader Andrea Horwath questioning Premier Doug Ford, as expected, about the notwithstanding clause on Bill 5. And as Ford started answering his questions, we heard people in the gallery start coughing very loudly, and then it became obvious that they were doing it deliberately to try and interfere with Doug Ford answering the questions. They were warned by the Speaker that they are not allowed to do that. No forms of demonstration are allowed within the public gallery. And some of them not quite heeding that warning from the Speaker. Some of them started then yelling out at the Premier, calling him a bully, yelling things like, "Shame on you," also yelling, "This is what democracy looks like," and "We are the people." So quite a scene that was playing out, and that prompted the Speaker to order security to remove those people from the chamber, and question period was suspended then for a few minutes as that was taking place. Some people not leaving the chamber willingly. There was one person that was let out in handcuffs, Andrew, and so that's how it played out inside the legislature. Outside, there were protesters greeting the people as they came out, applauding them. I had a chance to talk to some of them, though, as they were on their way into the building. They were lined up bright and early this morning outside of Queen's Park, ready to take part in, or to watch question period. Let's take a listen to what some of them were telling me about what brought them out here this morning.
My understanding is that the notwithstanding clause is to be used in exceptional circumstances.
It's scary. It's really scary what could be next. And he's already said in his press conference that there will be another time.
You have to stand up to bullies.
He said that because he got 40% of the vote in Ontario, that means he can do anything he wants.
So those were the views of those people that were here. We'll probably likely hear that from some other Torontonians who are not happy with what the Ontario government is doing. There's a protest planned later today at City Hall around 4 o'clock. But after a few minutes, question period did resume, Andrew, but with the public galleries empty, those people were not allowed back in.
Let me ask you a little bit now about what the politicians are saying, because they have spoken about this, so talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, once question period resumed, they picked up where they left off with, of course, the official opposition parties hammering the government over using the notwithstanding clause and the bill itself that they're using it on, slashing the size of City Council in Toronto in the midst of the election. So let's take a little bit of a listen to Andrea Horwath, official opposition leader, and how she was attacking the Premier.
Our democracy includes an independent judiciary and a free media to protect people from politicians who believe an electoral majority is the mandate, gives them the mandate to trample on people's rights.
And Andrea Horwath spoke to reporters afterwards in the scrums after question period, Andrew, accusing Doug Ford of having a personal grudge against city councillors from his days as a city councillor in Toronto and when his brother Rob Ford was mayor, calling him vindictive, again reminding the Premier that he did not campaign on this during the spring election, never once mentioned the idea of reducing the size of city council. But Doug Ford, of course, as you would imagine, was standing firm when he was taking this criticism from the official opposition. Let's listen to what that sounded like.
The people will decide in 4 years. The people will decide in 4 years, and I'll tell you who won't decide. A politically appointed judge by one person. The people of Ontario will decide if they want to move forward with saving people taxes, reducing higher rate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Quite a bit of heckling happening around here at Queen's Park today, and I'm sure that will continue later this afternoon after the bill is introduced.
And that is the CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Toronto. Now, Caroline Mulroney is fully supporting her government's use of the notwithstanding clause. She's the Attorney General for Ontario. That's despite the views of her father, the former Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney. He's made it clear that he is uncomfortable with its use both during his days in government and now. Here's how his daughter responded to questions about it today.
And I am fully supportive of our government's decision to appeal the decision of the Superior Court, which we believe it was wrongly decided. And so we are appealing that case. And because time is of the essence, there is an election in the City of Toronto in a few short weeks. We have decided to use a tool that is available, is a legal tool that is available to the legislature. And so we are using that tool to ensure that we can get this election, that the people of Toronto have the rules that they need and clarity that they need for this election.
What do you say to your father?
And with respect to my father, his views on the notwithstanding clause have been well documented, and he is open to the opportunity every time to be able to speak to those. He was opposed to the notwithstanding clause when it was introduced, but he recognizes, and he said yesterday, that it is a tool that is a legal tool that is available for democratically elected legislatures to use.
Ontario Attorney General Caroline Mulroney speaking earlier today. Let's bring in somebody who was at Queen's Park today. Omar Haredai is a lawyer, but he went to the provincial legislature as a citizen. He was ejected from the public gallery today, and he joins me now from Queen's Park. So can you describe the mood, Omar, inside the legislature and the events leading up to that moment? You and others were removed from the gallery.
Thank you, Andrew. It was a somber day. I think many of the individuals in the gallery were deeply concerned, and rightly so, when we have the Ontario government acting in the way that it is for the first time in our entire history. The audience there was immediately unhappy with the way that Premier Ford was answering the questions posed to him by the official opposition, and that turned into some coughing, as we heard, and the coughing then grew into comments and eventually shouting about how this is a democracy, we are the people, that these laws are supposed to be for us, and that even in a democracy, we're supposed to respect the rule of law and respect the decisions that our courts make. And I think that's underlying what the concern is here by people who are here at Queen's Park today.
So what did you do? Were you coughing or were you shouting, and then what happened?
No, as a lawyer, I have to follow rules. Rules is kind of what we work with. So I was not coughing, I was observing, and I had no intention of disrupting the legislature. My intent is to observe the function, to ensure that members hopefully are speaking of their conscience and speaking out against this, and at the very least abstain from voting for a revised Bill C5 or a revised Bill 5 with a Section 33 notwithstanding clause added to it.
What did you think about the fact that the Speaker removed people from the gallery? And from what we understand, maybe you have more insight on this, I don't think there's going to be, the public is not going to be allowed back into the gallery later today when that bill is more formally introduced.
We've been told, and everyone has cleared out here, this lawn was full earlier this morning. We've been told that nobody from the public will be allowed back in the afternoon. I think it's very telling that the Ontario government, for the first time in its history, invoking Section 33, has to do it without public oversight, without the public presence here at Queen's Park today. So I think that tells you how strongly opposed this was. And really, I mean, we heard the quote from Caroline Mulroney there. Section 33 of the Charter is not a legal mechanism. It's not a constitutional mechanism. That's just wrong in my interpretation and reading of the Charter. It's an exceptional tool, an exceptional mechanism that's only supposed to be used sparingly. And the bigger concern, the greater concern here is that we've had a premier that said, look, I've invoked Section 33 once. I'm not afraid to do it again. Which means, what is the role of our Constitution? What's the role of our Charter? Why do we even have courts if we're going to have a legislature that rules by fiat and doesn't really care about constitutional provisions at all?
So you're also a lawyer, so you obviously know what you're talking about. Why was it so important, though, Omar, for you to be there today?
Well, this was definitely a day in history, and not all days in history are good ones. And so it was important to observe how this actually was executed. It is going to have implications for the citizens of Toronto, but not just the citizens of Toronto, the citizens of Ontario, because the Premier has now indicated with this success, invoking Section 33, he's now eyeing other cities, and Ottawa looks like it might be next on the list.
Ford has justified his use of the notwithstanding clause in going against the ruling by the Ontario Superior Court by saying, I was elected, the judge was appointed. What do you make of his remarks about the judiciary?
I think it's a very dangerous situation when elected officials start to criticize the judiciary in this manner. Democracy is not simply a matter of individuals being elected. Some of the biggest dictatorships and fascist governments that we've seen in history were elected democratically. We need a constitutional democracy. We need to have a strong and robust and independent judiciary in order for our democracy to function well. And so to have direct attacks of that nature coming from our premier is simply inappropriate. We're allowed to disagree with our courts. We're allowed to disagree with judicial rulings, but we don't attack the actual existence of the judiciary and the function in reviewing the executive decisions made by the government in the way that the Premier has done here this week. It's actually very concerning, Andrew.
And so just, Omar, quickly, are you going to go? I think there's going to be another protest at City Hall later. Are you going to continue your fight or your objection to all of this?
Well, I'm not personally in this fight. This is a fight that ultimately will be played out in the polls. And so I'm happy to observe and provide support to all those other individuals, all of those people in Ontario who are concerned about this. I may stop by, in fact, the event that's happening later on today. But like everybody else here in Ontario who's working hard to make it a better place, I also have to get back to work and pay my taxes so that our government can hopefully do its job.
All right, Omar, it was nice talking to you. Thank you for taking the time today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Lawyer Omar Haredai at Queen's Park in Toronto.